I could still feel the burn of 300 pairs of eyes on my back as I walked out of that conference room. 18 years of my life, gone in 10 humiliating minutes. You are incompetent. You've damaged this company's reputation with your negligence. Austin Velmont's words still echoed in my head, his finger pointed at me like a weapon before the entire staff. The CEO I had once admired, who had been my mentor, had transformed into my executioner without warning. My name is Eliza Mercer, and until yesterday, I was the Chief Operations Officer at Beyond Innovations. The company had been my second home, my colleagues like family. I had missed my daughter Caroline's ballet recitals, postponed vacations, and worked through high fevers to ensure Beyond's success. My husband James had often complained that I was married to my job, but I always believed the sacrifice was worth it. I want you and your things out of here in 10 minutes or I'll call security, Austin had declared, a ghost of a smile playing at the corners of his lips. As I emptied my desk into a cardboard box, awards, photographs, 18 years of memories, I remained strangely calm. Something inside me had shifted the moment I saw the unmistakable triumph in Austin's eyes. This wasn't about incompetence. This was calculated. This was personal. I knew exactly what had triggered this. 3 weeks ago, I had discovered discrepancies in project reports that Austin had personally overseen. Documentation had been altered, objectives changed after approval. When I'd privately brought these concerns to him, he'd dismissed them with an ease that now seemed suspicious. Just administrative errors, Eliza. I'll handle it. But I hadn't been convinced. For the past 2 weeks, I had been quietly investigating, comparing original documents with the altered versions, noting patterns of changes that benefited certain departments while undermining others, particularly mine. What Austin didn't know as he humiliated me before our colleagues was that I had documented everything. Every altered report, every manipulated timeline, every strategic sabotage designed to make my department look inefficient, all securely backed up in multiple locations. That night, I sat in my home office staring at the rain streaking down the windows, unable to tell my family what had happened. Caroline had bounded in from school, chattering about her upcoming science project, and James had brought home takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. The normalcy of it all felt surreal against the wreckage of my professional life. "Mom, are you okay?" Caroline asked, her 13-year-old intuition sharper than I'd given her credit for. "Just tired, sweetheart," I replied, forcing a smile. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, I pulled out my hidden evidence. As I spread the documents across my desk, a plan began to form. Austin expected me to disappear in shame, to become another casualty of corporate politics. But he had severely underestimated the woman he had helped shape over 18 years. My phone buzzed with a text from Elaine, my assistant for the past decade. "Whatever he said isn't true. The whole floor is in shock. What can I do?" I hesitated before replying. Involving others could put their jobs at risk, but I also knew I couldn't fight this battle alone. "Meet me for coffee tomorrow, the usual place at 7, I wrote back. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe 30 minutes early, my mind racing with next steps. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night organizing my evidence and formulating a strategy. Elaine slid into the chair across from me, her usually impeccable appearance slightly disheveled. "This is insane, Eliza. Everyone's talking. Austin announced a restructuring of your entire division effective immediately." "That was fast," I remarked, my suspicions confirmed. "He's been planning this for months. But why? You've been nothing but loyal to that company. To him." I pushed a folder across the table. "Because of this." As Elaine flipped through the pages, her eyes widened. "These are all the projects that failed over the past year. But these notes show that they were set up to fail from the beginning," I finished for her. "Parameters changed mid-project, resources reallocated, timelines shortened without notice. But why would Austin sabotage his own company's projects?" I leaned forward. "Not the company's projects. My projects. My team. My reputation. I don't understand." Elaine shook her head. Neither did I, fully. But I had a theory forming. 3 months ago, when the board was discussing future leadership, my name came up, didn't it? Elaine's silence was confirmation enough. Austin has been grooming his nephew for a leadership position, I continued. A 28-year-old with barely 5 years of experience. The board would never choose him over me unless you were discredited, Elaine whispered, the realization dawning on her face. We were interrupted by the arrival of another person at our table. Robert Yates, the company's lead legal counsel and someone I had always considered a casual colleague rather than a friend. I thought I might find you here, he said, sitting down without invitation. You should know that Austin called an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. The official reason is to discuss the breach of company protocols that led to your dismissal. My heart raced. He was moving faster than I'd anticipated, solidifying his version of events before I could respond. Why are you telling me this? I asked Robert cautiously. Because what's happening isn't right, he replied, straightening his tie. And because I have access to information you might find useful. He slid a USB drive across the table. What's this? I asked. Insurance, Robert answered simply. I've been keeping my own records. Austin has a pattern of eliminating anyone he perceives as a threat. I stared at the small device, hardly daring to hope. Why would you risk your position to help me? Robert's usually stoic expression faltered. My sister worked for Austin at his previous company. She noticed irregularities in how projects were managed, just like you did. When she brought her concerns to him, he didn't need to finish the sentence. I pocketed the USB drive, a new determination setting in. I need to act before that board meeting. What are you planning? Elaine asked. I stood, gathering my things with purpose. Something Austin would never expect. He thinks he's destroyed me, that I'll slink away in disgrace. A coldness settled in my chest where hurt had been just hours before. He has no idea who he's dealing with. As I headed for the door, I turned back to my unexpected allies. I need you both to return to work as if nothing's happened. Act normal. Say nothing about meeting me. What are you going to do? Robert called after me. I paused, thinking of the designer suit hanging in my closet that I'd been saving for a special occasion. I'm going to crash a board meeting. What I didn't tell them was that I was also going to call in a favor from someone whose very name would make Austin Velmont's blood run cold. Someone from his past who owed me for keeping a secret that could have destroyed them both years ago. It was time to collect. As I walked to my car, my phone rang with an unknown number. When I answered, the voice on the other end sent a chill down my spine. Eliza, it's Alice Velmont, Austin's wife. We need to talk. Now. I know this is unexpected, Alice Velmont said, stirring her untouched tea. We sat in a quiet corner of the Meridian, an upscale hotel bar far from any Beyond employees' usual haunts. Her elegant appearance, perfectly styled blonde hair, tailored cream blazer, contrasted sharply with the anxiety in her eyes. I remained guarded. Unexpected is an understatement. I'm not sure what Austin's wife would want with the woman he just publicly humiliated. Ex-wife, technically. Our divorce finalizes next month. She looked up. And I'm here because I know my husband better than anyone. What he did to you wasn't random, Eliza. My suspicions deepened. You know about yesterday? Austin came home practically gloating, said he'd handled a problem. It didn't take much to figure out who he meant. She pulled out her phone and showed me a news alert. Beyond Innovations, COO steps down amid controversy. He's already controlling the narrative. Why do you care what happens to me? I asked bluntly. Alice's composed facade cracked slightly. Because I've been where you are. Betrayed. Blindsided. Made to feel like you're crazy for questioning things that don't add up. She leaned forward. And because I have information you need. For the next hour, Alice painted a picture of Austin that aligned perfectly with my suspicions, but went deeper than I could have imagined. His pattern of eliminating perceived threats. His obsession with controlling information. The careful cultivation of his public image while privately undermining anyone who gained too much influence. He has the board wrapped around his finger, Alice explained. But there's one person he can't control. Victoria Sinclair. I knew the name well. Victoria was Beyond's founder and majority shareholder, though she'd stepped back from daily operations years ago to focus on philanthropy. Her rare appearances at company events were treated like royalty visiting. Victoria was my mentor before I met Austin, Alice continued. She still trusts me, And more importantly, she values integrity above all else. Why would Victoria believe me over the CEO she appointed? Because of this. Alice pulled a small recorder from her purse. Austin has a habit of processing out loud when he thinks he's alone, rehearsing confrontations, planning his moves. I started recording after I found evidence he was trying to push me out of my own charitable foundation. She pressed play. Austin's voice filled the space between us, laying out exactly how he planned to discredit me, step by step. My hands trembled as I listened to the calculated destruction of my career described in such cold, methodical terms. Why would he do this? I whispered, though I already suspected the answer. The Wellington acquisition, Alice said simply. The pieces clicked into place. Beyond was poised to acquire Wellington Technologies, a deal worth billions that I had been instrumental in negotiating. If successful, my position would be unassailable. With you gone, Austin takes full credit, Alice continued. The board approves his nephew's promotion, and his control of the company is complete. I sat back, processing this information. Why are you really helping me, Alice? Her professional demeanor slipped, revealing raw hurt beneath. Because for 20 years I watched him destroy people who deserved better. Because I was too afraid to speak up. And because... She hesitated. I've admired your work from afar, Eliza. You've accomplished everything I once dreamed of before I let Austin convince me to focus on being the perfect corporate wife instead. I studied her face, searching for deception but finding only resolve. What exactly are you proposing? Victoria is hosting a charity gala tomorrow night. All the board members will be there, including Austin. It's the perfect opportunity to present our case directly to her, away from Austin's controlled environment. Our case? Alice nodded. I'm done being silent. We bring the evidence together. Your documentation, my recordings, and whatever was on that USB drive I saw Robert give you this morning. I raised an eyebrow, surprised by her thoroughness. She shrugged. I have eyes everywhere. Austin taught me the value of information at least. As we parted ways, I felt cautiously hopeful. With Alice's insider knowledge and my evidence, we stood a chance against Austin. Still, doubt lingered. Could I trust Alice completely? Was I walking into another trap? You're going where? James looked up from helping Caroline with her homework, concern etched on his face. After 15 years of marriage, he could read my expressions better than anyone. I hadn't told him about my firing yet. Coming home, I'd changed into casual clothes and pretended it was a work-from-home day. But now, pulling out my most elegant evening gown, I could no longer hide the truth. I need to tell you something, I began, closing our bedroom door. As I recounted the events of the past 2 days, James's expression shifted from shock to anger to fierce determination. That manipulative bastard, he muttered when I finished. I always sensed something off about him at company events. I need to attend this gala, I explained. It might be my only chance to clear my name before Austin's version becomes permanent. James took my hands in his. Then we'll face this together. I'll rent a tux. His unwavering support brought tears to my eyes. For too long, I'd compartmentalized my life, work separate from family. Now, when my professional world had crumbled, I was rediscovering the foundation I'd neglected. What about Caroline? I asked. She's 13, Eliza. Old enough to understand that sometimes adults face injustice too, and that her mother is brave enough to fight back. That night, we sat Caroline down and explained the situation in age-appropriate terms. Her reaction surprised me. So your boss is basically a playground bully, she summarized, indignant on my behalf. Like Madison Peterson, who spread rumors about Zoe last month. I smiled at her simple but accurate assessment. Something like that. Then you have to stand up to him, Mom. That's what you always tell me to do. Out of the mouths of babes. And the Wellington Hotel ballroom glittered with chandeliers and the city's elite. James squeezed my hand reassuringly as we entered, my heart pounding beneath my crimson gown. Across the room, I spotted Austin holding court with board members, his characteristic charismatic laugh carrying over the crowd. There's Victoria, James murmured, nodding toward a distinguished woman in her 60s. Victoria Sinclair's silver hair was swept into an elegant updo, her commanding presence drawing respect without effort. Alice appeared at my side, elegant in midnight blue. "Remember the plan. We wait for my signal before approaching Victoria." I nodded, though anxiety crawled up my spine. "Have you seen Robert? He was supposed to meet us here with additional documentation." Alice frowned. "No. And he's not responding to texts." A server offered champagne. I declined, needing a clear head. James took a glass, scanning the room with the protective air he'd developed during his years as an emergency room doctor. "Austin has spotted you," he warned quietly. I turned to see Austin's smile falter momentarily before he excused himself from his group and began making his way toward us. "Eliza, what a surprise." His voice dripped with false warmth. "I wouldn't have expected you to show your face so soon after recent events." James stiffened beside me, but I placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Austin." I kept my voice steady. "I believe in facing situations directly. Something you taught me, ironically." His eyes narrowed slightly. "A commendable attitude. Though perhaps a private event isn't the place to process professional disappointments." "On the contrary," Alice interjected smoothly, "I personally invited Eliza. Victoria was just asking about her, in fact." Austin's composure slipped for a millisecond, long enough to confirm he hadn't expected his ex-wife's involvement. Alice, always full of surprises. The tension between them was palpable. "If you'll excuse us," Alice said with practiced politeness. "Victoria is waiting." As we turned to leave, Austin grasped my elbow. "Think carefully about your next move, Eliza," he murmured, voice low enough that only I could hear. "You're not the first to challenge me. Ask Alice what happened to the others." A chill ran through me at the implied threat, but before I could respond, my phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "Don't trust Alice. Meeting in service corridor, 5 minutes. Come alone. R." I glanced up at Alice, who was already moving confidently toward Victoria. Was she truly my ally, or was I being played from both sides? "Everything okay?" James asked, noticing my hesitation. I showed him the text. "I need to find out what this means." "I'm coming with you," he insisted. "No," I decided. "Stay with Alice. Keep an eye on her and Austin. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, find me." As I slipped away toward the service area, the weight of Austin's warning and the mysterious text competed for prominence in my mind. The corridor was dimly lit and deserted, perfect for a private conversation or a perfect trap. The service door creaked as I pushed it open. "Robert?" I called softly. A shadow moved at the end of the hallway, but as the figure stepped into the light, I realized it wasn't Robert at all. It was Elaine, her face pale with urgency. "Thank God you came," she whispered. "Robert's been in an accident, and there's something you need to know about Alice Velmont." "Alice isn't who you think she is," Elaine said, her voice barely above a whisper. She glanced nervously toward the service door. "And Robert's car accident wasn't an accident." My heart raced. "Is he okay?" "He's in surgery. Brake failure on Highland Drive." Elaine pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages from Robert sent earlier that evening. "Found something big in Austin's private server. Meeting delayed. Don't trust anyone until I show you this. Strange car following me since leaving office. If anything happens to me, everything's on encrypted drive. Password, Eliza, Truth 2025. The last message had been sent just minutes before his accident. "Robert gave me a copy of the drive this afternoon," Elaine explained. "He said to only give it to you if something happened to him." She handed me a small, external drive. "But that's not all. I did some digging on Alice after you mentioned meeting her." Elaine pulled up a folder on her phone labeled Alice V. Inside were newspaper clippings and screenshots of articles dating back 15 years. As I scanned through them, a pattern emerged that turned my blood cold. Alice wasn't just Austin's wife, I murmured, the realization dawning. She was his business partner. The articles detailed Alice's early career before she married Austin, a brilliant strategist who had helped several struggling companies restructure by identifying and removing inefficient elements. The same companies where Austin had served as a consultant. "She's been playing the same game as him all along," Elaine said. "The divorce, the supposed split. It's theater. They're still working together. But why target me specifically? What could they possibly gain? It's not just about you. Elaine pulled up another file. It's about this. The document was a preliminary patent application for a revolutionary data integration system, one I'd been developing in secret with a small team under Beyond's research division. A system that would transform how the company operated and potentially double its value overnight. How did you find this? I asked, stunned. I had kept the project compartmentalized, with only a handful of people aware of its full potential. Robert found it in Austin's files. He's known about your project for months, and he's been systematically gathering information to replicate it with his own team. But he would need access to our code, our research, which he gets full control of once you're discredited and removed, Elaine finished. The Wellington acquisition is just a smokescreen. This patent is the real prize. With you gone and your reputation in tatters, who would believe you if you claimed the technology was yours? My mind raced to connect the dots. And Alice's role in all this? She approaches you as an ally, gains your trust, discovers what evidence you have, and ensures you discredit yourself in front of Victoria Sinclair tonight. I checked my watch. James would be wondering where I was. I need to warn him about Alice. There's more, Elaine said. According to what Robert found, Austin and Alice have used this playbook before. Their previous target, she hesitated. Who? Victoria Sinclair's son, Michael. He was developing similar technology 5 years ago before a mental breakdown ended his career. A breakdown triggered by a systematic campaign of gaslighting and sabotage. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. That's why Alice mentioned Victoria specifically. It's not just about discrediting me, it's about controlling Victoria through her son's legacy. Exactly. If Austin controls the technology Michael was working on, he controls Victoria's emotional connection to her son's work. A noise from the hallway made us both freeze. Footsteps approached the service door. We need to move, I whispered. Is there another way out? Elaine nodded toward the far end of the corridor. Kitchen exit. As we slipped through the kitchen, dodging busy staff preparing desserts, I formulated a new plan. I need to get back to James without Alice seeing me. And I need to speak to Victoria, but on my terms, not theirs. What are you thinking? Elaine asked as we emerged into a side hallway. They expect me to either continue trusting Alice or confront her publicly, both of which end with me looking unstable. We need to change the game. I pulled out my phone and texted James, "Meet me at the coat check. Urgent. Trust no one." His reply came seconds later. On my way. I need you to do something for me, I told Elaine. Find a hotel security officer. Tell them we have reason to believe Robert Yates's accident wasn't an accident, and that we need additional security around Victoria Sinclair immediately. Elaine nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. What about you? I'm going to give Austin and Alice exactly what they don't expect. James was waiting by the coat check, concern etched on his face. What's happening? I quickly explained everything Elaine had discovered. His medical training kicked in, keeping him calm despite the shocking revelations. So we can't trust Alice, and Austin is more dangerous than we thought, he summarized. What's the plan? First, we protect the evidence, I said, handing him the encrypted drive. Take this home and secure it. Then call Detective Sanders. Detective Sandra Sanders was an old friend from college who now worked in white-collar crime. If anyone could help navigate this situation legally, it was her. What about you? James asked, reluctant to leave me. I'm going to speak with Victoria, but I need to neutralize Alice and Austin first. I outlined my strategy, watching his expression shift from concern to reluctant admiration. It's risky, he warned. Everything about this situation is risky, I replied, but they've underestimated me from the beginning. Time to use that to our advantage. After James departed, I took a deep breath and returned to the ballroom. Alice spotted me immediately, making her way over with calculated casualness. Where did you disappear to? She asked, a hint of suspicion in her voice. I've been looking everywhere. Victoria's asking for you. I maintained a neutral expression, deciding to test her. Sorry, I received an urgent call about Robert. He's been in an accident. Alice's reaction was perfect, just the right amount of shock and concern. If I hadn't been watching so closely, I would have missed the flash of satisfaction in her eyes. How terrible! Is he all right? They're not sure yet. Apparently, his brakes failed on Highland Drive. She paled slightly. Not from concern, I realized, but from the specific detail I'd shared. Highland Drive wasn't a random location. It was the same road where Michael Sinclair had his accident years ago, according to the articles Elaine had shown me. What a coincidence, I added pointedly. Alice's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. What do you mean? Nothing. Just thinking aloud. I glanced toward Victoria, who was engaged in conversation across the room. Shall we approach Victoria now? Alice hesitated, clearly recalculating. Perhaps we should wait for a better moment. She seems busy. No time like the present, I insisted, already moving in Victoria's direction. I could practically feel Alice's anxiety radiating behind me. Victoria Sinclair turned as we approached, her shrewd eyes taking in my determined expression and Alice's barely concealed discomfort. Eliza Mercer, she acknowledged with a nod. I was beginning to think you were avoiding me. Not at all, Ms. Sinclair. In fact, I've been looking forward to speaking with you. Alice quickly interjected. Eliza has had a difficult few days. Perhaps we should discuss things privately. Actually, I interrupted smoothly, I think what I have to say should be heard by multiple parties. I gestured to Austin, who was watching us intently from nearby. Would you mind joining us, Austin? He approached cautiously, eyes darting between Alice and me. Of course. Always happy to clear the air. Victoria observed the tension with interest. This sounds important. Shall we use my private room? As we followed Victoria toward a secluded section of the venue, I caught Austin and Alice exchanging a subtle glance. They thought they had me cornered, that I was walking into their trap. But thanks to Elaine and Robert's warnings, I was now orchestrating their downfall instead. Victoria's private room was an elegantly appointed lounge with plush seating and discreet security. As the door closed behind us, she turned with the directness that had made her a legendary businesswoman. Now, what's this about? I understand there have been some difficulties at Beyond recently. Austin stepped forward smoothly. Unfortunately, we discovered some serious protocol breaches in Eliza's department. As difficult as it was, I had to take immediate action to protect the company. Is that so? Victoria turned to me. And your perspective, Eliza? The moment of truth had arrived. Alice tensed beside me, clearly expecting me to launch into accusations against Austin. Instead, I did something that caught everyone by surprise. I smiled. Actually, Ms. Sinclair, I'm not here to dispute my termination at all. I maintained eye contact with Victoria, ignoring Austin and Alice's confused expressions. I'm here to discuss your son, Michael, and the project he was working on before his accident 5 years ago. The color drained from Victoria's face. Austin froze, and Alice took an involuntary step back. What about my son? Victoria asked, her voice suddenly fragile. I leaned forward, speaking gently but clearly. I believe I've discovered who was responsible for sabotaging his work. And I think you'll find it connects directly to what's happening at Beyond right now. Behind Victoria, Austin's expression transformed from confusion to cold fury as he realized his carefully constructed plan was unraveling before his eyes. I don't know what Eliza thinks she's discovered, he began. But bringing up Michael is clearly a desperate attempt to— Let her speak, Victoria commanded, her eyes never leaving mine. Tell me what you know about my son. The private room fell silent. Victoria's gaze remained fixed on me, her composure wavering only slightly at the mention of her son. 5 years ago, I began carefully, Michael was developing an integrated data system that would revolutionize how information flowed through companies. A system remarkably similar to the one I've been quietly developing in my division. Victoria's eyes widened slightly. How do you know about Michael's project? That information was kept confidential. Because Robert Yates found the connection. I turned toward Austin, whose jaw had tightened. Robert discovered files in Austin's private server, files containing both Michael's original research and records of my current project. This is absurd, Austin interjected, his voice controlled but strained. Robert Yates has no authorization to access my private files. Whatever he claims to have found is either fabricated or obtained illegally. Is that why Robert is in surgery right now after his brakes mysteriously failed? I countered. The same way Michael's car had brake issues on the very same road 5 years ago. Victoria's posture stiffened. What are you suggesting, Eliza? Alice stepped forward, her practiced, concerned expression in place. Victoria, clearly Eliza is distressed about losing her position. These wild accusations. Highland Drive, I interrupted, watching Alice closely. That's where Robert's accident happened tonight. The exact same stretch of road where Michael had his accident. Alice faltered, the coincidence too specific to dismiss. When I mentioned Highland Drive to Alice earlier, I continued, addressing Victoria directly. She reacted with recognition before I'd mentioned it was the same location as Michael's accident. How would she know that detail? Unless she was already familiar with what happened to your son. Victoria turned to Alice, scrutinizing her with new suspicion. Alice? I remember you mentioning it once, Alice stammered. Years ago. I've never discussed the details of Michael's accident publicly, Victoria replied, her voice hardening. Not even the location. Austin stepped in smoothly. This is becoming ridiculous. Victoria, clearly Eliza is trying to distract from her own professional failings by creating elaborate conspiracy theories. I reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone. Then perhaps we should let the evidence speak for itself. I pulled up the audio file Alice had given me earlier, supposedly of Austin plotting against me. Alice provided this recording, claiming it was proof of Austin's plan to discredit me. I pressed play. Austin's voice filled the room. We need to remove Eliza before the Wellington deal closes. The board needs to see her as incompetent, unstable. Take control of the narrative early. I stopped the recording. Initially, this seemed damning, but listen to what happens when I slow down the playback and enhance certain frequencies. I adjusted the settings and played it again. This time, subtle background noises became clearer, including faint instructions from another voice before Austin spoke each line. That's called audio prompting, I explained. Someone was feeding Austin lines to say, which were then edited out. Poorly, as it turns out. My daughter's school media club uses the same technique for their radio plays. Victoria's expression darkened as she began to understand the implications. And who would be giving these prompts? The same person who conveniently provided me with this evidence right when I needed it most. I turned to Alice, whose composed facade was cracking. The perfect setup. Give me seemingly damning evidence against Austin. Encourage me to confront him publicly. Then watch me discredit myself with manipulated recordings. This is preposterous, Alice protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Is it? I opened another file on my phone. Elaine found some interesting articles about your early career, Alice. Companies where you and Austin both worked as consultants before your marriage. Companies where key executives were systematically removed after being labeled unstable or incompetent. Victoria's expression grew increasingly severe as she looked between Austin and Alice. I think I've heard enough. Security will escort both of you out while we investigate these claims. Austin's face darkened. You can't possibly believe these wild accusations. What I believe, Victoria replied coldly, is that my son's work deserves further examination, as does Robert Yates's accident and these supposed coincidences. As Victoria reached for the intercom to summon security, Austin made a last desperate attempt. Everything I've done has been for the company's benefit, he insisted. Eliza's project would have taken years to implement, cost millions in restructuring. So you admit you knew about my project? I interjected. The supposedly confidential research that only 5 people in the company had access to? Austin realized his mistake too late. Alice closed her eyes briefly, recognizing the game was up. Victoria. Austin tried again, his voice softening. We've been friends for 20 years. You know me. You know what I've done for Beyond. Yes, Victoria replied evenly. I'm beginning to see exactly what you've done. She pressed the intercom. Security to the executive lounge, please. As we waited for security to arrive, I decided to address one final question that had been bothering me. Why did you target me specifically? There are other executives who could have threatened your position. After a moment of tense silence, it was Alice who answered, a new coldness in her voice now that pretense was unnecessary. Because you reminded him of Michael, she said simply. The same innovative thinking, the same integrity. Austin saw in you what he saw in Michael, someone who couldn't be controlled or corrupted. Victoria inhaled sharply at this revelation. And like Michael, Alice continued, a hint of admiration in her voice despite everything, you proved more resilient than we anticipated. The door opened and 2 security officers entered. Victoria instructed them to escort Austin and Alice to her private office and ensure they remained there until further notice. As they were led away, Austin fixed me with a final venomous glare. This isn't over, he murmured as he passed. When the door closed behind them, Victoria sank onto a chair, suddenly looking her age. Tell me everything about Michael's project and how it connects to yours. For the next 30 minutes, I detailed what I had discovered, showing Victoria the documentation Elaine had provided. As I spoke, Victoria's expression shifted from grief to anger, and finally to resolve. Tomorrow morning, she announced, I'm calling an emergency board meeting. Austin and Alice will be removed from their positions, and a full investigation will be launched. She looked at me directly. I'd like you to return to Beyond, Eliza. Not just to your former position, but as interim CEO while we sort through this mess. The offer stunned me. Victoria, I'm honored, but you've demonstrated not just brilliance, but integrity and courage, she interrupted. Qualities I once saw in my son. Qualities Beyond desperately needs. As we discussed next steps, my phone buzzed with a text from James. Detective Sanders is here. Hospital confirms Robert is out of surgery. Stable. How are you? I texted back quickly. Safe. Victoria knows everything. Coming home soon with big news. Victoria noticed my smile. Good news, I hope? My husband, I explained. He's been my rock through all this. I couldn't have done it without him. She nodded, understanding. Family is what matters most in the end. Something I was reminded of rather painfully tonight. She stood, straightening her jacket. Now, shall we return to the gala? I believe we have an announcement to make. As we walked back toward the main ballroom, a weight lifted from my shoulders. The battle wasn't completely over. There would be investigations, legal proceedings, and the challenging task of rebuilding trust at Beyond. But the truth was finally coming to light. Victoria paused before we reached the ballroom doors. There's one thing I don't understand. How did you know to be suspicious of Alice? Many would have accepted her help without question. I thought about it for a moment. Something my daughter said, actually. She compared Austin to a playground bully, and it made me think about how bullies often operate. They rarely work alone. They have enablers, people who help maintain their power. I smiled slightly. Plus, Alice's story was just a little too perfect, her appearance a little too convenient. Victoria nodded thoughtfully. Trust your instincts, another quality my son possessed. She squared her shoulders. Ready? As we entered the ballroom together, conversations hushed and heads turned. I spotted Elaine across the room, relief washing over her face when she saw us. News of Austin and Alice's escort from the building had already spread, creating a buzz of speculation. Victoria guided me to the small stage where the band had been playing. Taking the microphone, she addressed the gathered crowd with the commanding presence that had made her legendary. Ladies and gentlemen, I have an important announcement regarding the future leadership of Beyond Innovations. As she spoke, my phone vibrated with another text. Expecting James, I glanced down discreetly, but the message wasn't from my husband. It was from an unknown number. Congratulations on your victory, Eliza. Impressive performance. But you've overlooked something critical. Check the Wellington contract Austin signed yesterday, particularly subsection 7.3. You have less than 12 hours before it's too late. A friend. My heart raced as Victoria continued her announcement, publicly vindicating me and condemning Austin's actions. The room erupted in applause, but I barely heard it. Who had sent the message? And what had I missed in the Wellington contract that could still threaten everything we'd just accomplished? The applause faded as Victoria completed her announcement, officially naming me interim CEO of Beyond Innovations. Smiling faces surrounded me, colleagues offering congratulations and expressing relief at Austin's removal. But my thoughts remained fixed on the mysterious text message. As soon as I could politely excuse myself, I found a quiet corner and called Elaine. "I need you to get me a copy of the Wellington acquisition contract," I said without preamble. Specifically subsection 7.3. "What's going on?" Elaine asked. "I thought we won." "Maybe not completely. I just received an anonymous message warning me about something in the contract Austin signed yesterday." "Yesterday?" Elaine's voice sharpened. "The board hadn't approved any signing yet. They were waiting until next week." "Exactly. Which means Austin went behind their backs to sign something unauthorized." "I'll head to the office right now and pull the document," Elaine promised. "No," I decided. "It's too risky for you to go alone, especially after what happened to Robert. Meet me there in 30 minutes. As I ended the call, I spotted James entering the ballroom, scanning the crowd until he found me. The relief on his face when our eyes met made my heart clench with gratitude. "You did it," he said as he reached me, pulling me into a tight embrace. "Not quite yet," I replied, showing him the text. "We need to go to the office." James frowned. "It could be a trap, or it could be legitimate. Either way, we can't ignore it." Victoria approached us, champagne in hand. "Eliza, there are several board members eager to speak with you." "I'm sorry, Victoria, but something urgent has come up with the Wellington acquisition," I explained. "I need to check on a contract detail immediately." Her expression became serious. "What's happened?" I hesitated, unsure how much to share. "I received information suggesting Austin may have signed something unauthorized yesterday. Something in subsection 7.3 that could be problematic." Victoria's eyes widened slightly. "The poison pill provision," she murmured. "The what?" "It's an old contract clause Wellington insists on including in all their acquisition agreements," she explained. "A protective measure that gives them specific rights if certain conditions are triggered. We always negotiate to remove it." My unease deepened. "I need to see that contract." "I'm coming with you," Victoria declared, handing her champagne to a passing server. "And I'm calling Henry Wells." "The corporate attorney?" Victoria nodded grimly. "If Austin activated a poison pill, we'll need the best legal mind available." Beyond's headquarters stood silent and mostly dark as we arrived. A skeleton security staff, our only companions in the massive building. Elaine was waiting in the lobby, her expression tense. "I tried to access the contract electronically," she reported as we rode the elevator to the executive floor. "But my access has been restricted. Someone changed the permissions after hours." "We'll use my authority," Victoria said, her voice steely. In the executive suite, Victoria logged into the secure document system with her founder's credentials. After a few tense moments, she located the Wellington contract signed the previous day. "Here it is," she said, scanning through the digital document. Subsection 7.3. As we read the clause together, the blood drained from my face. Austin had not only failed to remove the poison pill provision, he had modified it to his advantage. "If the CEO who signed the acquisition agreement is removed from their position within 30 days of signing," I read aloud, "Wellington reserves the right to nullify the agreement and claim a termination fee of $100 million, or to assume majority operational control of Beyond's data integration division." "My division?" I whispered. "The one developing the technology similar to Michael's." Victoria's expression hardened. "He created a no-win scenario. Either Beyond pays a crippling penalty, or Wellington takes control of your division, which Austin would then join as a consultant, I imagine." "But how does this benefit Austin now that he's been exposed?" James asked. Henry Wells, who had arrived minutes earlier, adjusted his glasses. "Because Austin likely has a side agreement with Wellington's current leadership, one that would allow him to maintain control over the technology regardless of his position at Beyond." "Exactly," came a familiar voice from the doorway. We turned to find Alice Velmont standing there, alone and remarkably composed despite the events of the evening. "Security will be here any second," Elaine warned, reaching for the phone. "No need," Alice replied. "I'm not here to cause trouble. Quite the opposite." She approached slowly, hands visible to show she meant no threat. "I sent the text, Eliza. Why would you help me?" I demanded. You've been working with Austin all along. A complicated expression crossed Alice's face. Part bitterness, part admiration. Austin and I have been partners for 20 years. We built his career together, dismantled competitors together. She paused. But there are lines I never agreed to cross. Michael Sinclair was one of them. Victoria stiffened. What do you know about my son? I know Austin went too far with him. Alice replied quietly. What happened to Michael wasn't supposed to be permanent. Just enough to discourage him from pursuing his project until Austin could secure the patents himself. She looked directly at Victoria. I didn't know about the brake tampering until after it happened. By then, it was too late. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Alice was essentially confessing to knowledge of criminal acts. Why come forward now? I asked. Alice smiled thinly. Self-preservation. Austin has contingency plans for everything, including sacrificing me if necessary. The moment you exposed us to Victoria, I became expendable. She placed a USB drive on the table. This contains everything. Austin's side agreement with Wellington's CEO, his offshore accounts, and evidence of what he did to Michael. And what do you want in exchange? Victoria asked coldly. Immunity, Alice replied without hesitation. I'll testify against Austin, help you unravel all his schemes. In return, I walk away without charges. Henry Wells began to object, but Victoria silenced him with a gesture. We'll discuss terms later, she told Alice. First, tell us how to neutralize this poison pill. Alice's smile turned genuine for the first time. That's the interesting part. Austin was so focused on creating his trap that he made a critical error. She pointed to a clause on the screen. The provision is triggered only if the signing CEO is removed, but according to Beyond's bylaws, who has the authority to sign acquisition agreements? The CEO or the board chair? Victoria answered, understanding dawning. And who is the board chair? Alice prompted. I am, Victoria realized. Exactly. Austin signed as CEO, but he never had Victoria co-sign as required by both company bylaws and the previous negotiation terms with Wellington. Alice looked satisfied. The contract isn't valid without both signatures. Henry Wells reviewed the document carefully, then nodded confirmation. She's right. The agreement requires both signatures for contracts over certain dollar thresholds. This one qualifies. Relief washed over me. So we simply don't add Victoria's signature. And we contact Wellington immediately to advise them of the unauthorized signing. Henry added. I know their general counsel. He'll understand the situation once we explain. Victoria studied Alice with undisguised suspicion. There's something you're not telling us. Why would Austin make such an obvious mistake? Alice's composure faltered slightly. Because he was rushing. The board meeting scheduled for next week was going to reveal something he couldn't allow to come to light. Which was? I pressed. An independent audit of the company's research and development spending, Alice explained. An audit that would have shown funds being diverted to a shadow R&D team, one working on replicating Michael's original technology and integrating it with what they'd stolen from Eliza's division. Victoria took a sharp breath. Where is this team located? A separate facility in Cambridge, operating under a shell company. All details are on the drive. Alice checked her watch. Austin is likely already on his way there to destroy evidence, assuming he made bail. The urgency of the situation was clear. Victoria immediately began making calls. To the police, to Wellington's CEO, to trusted board members. Henry Wells started drafting emergency legal notifications. Elaine coordinated with security to lock down all company systems. In the midst of the activity, I stepped aside with James, suddenly overwhelmed by the magnitude of everything that had transpired in just 2 days. Are you okay? He asked quietly. I think so, I replied, leaning into his steady presence. Just processing. Yesterday, I lost everything I'd worked for. Today, I'm interim CEO and uncovering corporate conspiracies. James smiled. Just another day in the life of Eliza Mercer, the woman who refuses to be anyone's scapegoat. His words reminded me of something important. I need to call Caroline, I realized. I want her to know that standing up to bullies worked. 4 months later. Mom, hurry up or we'll be late, Caroline called from downstairs. Coming, I adjusted my jacket one last time in the mirror. The navy suit was new, a gift from James to celebrate my permanent appointment as CEO of Beyond Innovations. The past months had been intense. Austin was awaiting trial on multiple charges, including attempted murder for Robert's accident. The evidence Alice provided had proven invaluable, though she had indeed negotiated immunity in exchange for her testimony. Victoria had become both mentor and friend, guiding me through the transition while focusing much of her energy on reviving her son Michael's legacy. Michael himself, while still dealing with the psychological aftermath of Austin's sabotage, had begun consulting on the integration of his original technology with my team's innovations. Downstairs, James and Caroline waited by the door. "Ready for your first official day as permanent CEO?" James asked, handing me my briefcase. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied. "Remember what you told me about Madison Peterson?" Caroline said as we walked to the car. I smiled, recalling our conversation about playground bullies the night everything began. "What about her?" "She apologized to Zoe yesterday. Said she was just jealous because Zoe was smarter than her." Caroline shrugged. "I guess sometimes bullies can learn their lesson." "Sometimes," I agreed, thinking of Austin and the path he'd chosen, but only if they're willing to recognize their mistakes. As we drove toward Beyond's headquarters, I reflected on how quickly life could change, how a single act of betrayal had ultimately led to transformation and growth. The company was healing under new leadership. Ethical guidelines had been strengthened. The culture of fear Austin had cultivated was being dismantled daily. I had lost something I valued, only to gain something more meaningful, a clearer understanding of my own strength and resilience. When we arrived at the office, Elaine was waiting in the lobby with Robert, now fully recovered from his accident and promoted to chief legal officer. "Ready, boss?" Elaine asked with a smile. I took a deep breath, looking up at the building that had been both the site of my greatest humiliation and my greatest triumph. "Absolutely," I replied. "We have work to do." As I stepped through the doors, I carried with me not just the lessons of the past, but a vision for the future, one built on integrity, transparency, and the courage to stand up for what's right, no matter the cost. Some betrayals break you, but if you're fortunate, they reveal what you're truly made of instead.